Next up, we have a panel discussion, and this is a very interesting panel discussion because it's about women in tech, reinventing gender diversity and inclusion in IT in a post-pandemic world. So we have our moderator and panelists, and it's almost a full women team. So our moderator is Ms. Charu Mahajan, partner at IBM Garage and corporate ventures and sector leader at IBM Consulting. Our panelists, we have Ms. Annie Chong, regional IT director of MSD, Mr. Joey Chua, head of IT OSM Maritime Ship Management, Ms. Geetha Gopal, head of infrastructure projects delivery and digital transformation, Panasonic Asia Pacific, and Ms. Joyce Chua, first vice president, enterprise data governance UOB. Can I please invite you on stage?
Okay. This is clearly a stage meant for people who are taller than at least me, and Joey is the only one who perhaps can take advantage of this particular stage. So, so I think it is challenging, and we've started off on the right note. I actually, this is a really difficult session. I think you mentioned about difficult sessions. The ones after lunch are the hardest. But this is a really important topic, and I pretty much think all of you in your organizations are facing the similar challenge on talent, be it diversity, be it the talent for skills, be it the fact that the market and the businesses are growing, but we are not able to get the right kind of talent in the right kind of time that we need. I just wanted to set the context of why we are here, and I think some of you will resonate with this. So STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, as you know, are widely acknowledged to be the drivers of our economy, especially coming out of COVID. I think all of us can agree to that. As a leader at IBM, I can definitely attest that our number one business challenge today is to be able to source for talent. And our supply side dynamics are very hard right now, as are perhaps those of all of our clients, even the government, as we know. And this is a topic that's often discussed, I think, in various policy forums and so on and so forth. Not only is that difficult, we've also seen in the last 20 years that new and emerging fields have come out. So, agri-tech, fintech, climate tech, sustainability, clean tech, and all of these new industries or technology-enabled growth of industries are requiring talent, which did not require that kind of talent in the beginning. Yet, when everything requires technology, we still have a problem that less than 22% of all management and boards comprise women. So for a pervasive problem or for a pervasive trend where we are looking at infusion of technology across the board, how is it that less than 30% of the actual people driving decisions at the very top are women? And I know that I look around the room, probably 90% of the audience in this room are men, but I just want to assure you that this is as much your problem as it is our problem on the panel. Because the war for talent is not discriminate. It does not discriminate between men and women. And the innovation and the speed of innovation we are driving today will require the kind of solutions we need that come from all kinds of diverse backgrounds, not just men, but a very diverse background. So this underrepresentation has remained a persistent problem for us all through. In fact, a recent study by NTU, all of you are familiar with NTU, found out that even though the percentage of women, the percentage of students going into STEM studies at the technology or the tertiary level women account for about 58% of that. But less than 30% of those women actually go on to take careers in technology. So these women are coming into colleges, they're subscribing to STEM fields of study, and then there is a leak. There is almost like a trapdoor where they exit. And even amongst the women who are coming in and looking at STEM studies, many of them land up taking courses in health, in other forms of science, but not technology. So that's a very worrying trend. And compare that to men. 70% of men who study in tertiary education STEM subjects go on to take careers in technology. So there is definitely a leaky pipe, not only at the very top of the pyramid, but even at the bottom, where the women who are coming in are studying these subjects but not coming into the workforce. So we have to turn to gurus to understand what's going on and get a point of view on how do we solve these problems collectively as a group of CIOs in this room. So I'm very excited to be joined by an illustrious panel today. All of you have an extremely wide-ranging, long-lasting experience in IT. And I think together we may be able to get varied opinions on what we should be doing about this. Let me start by quickly introducing our panel. On my left, we have Annie Chong, who runs regional IT for MSD, the pharma company. Annie is a regional director and responsible for change management for the company's IT transformation priorities. Extensive global and regional experience, Annie, in pharmaceutical and change management, and she's also the global steward for project management community company-wide. Annie is the founder and president of the Association of Change Management Professionals in Singapore, and she serves on the board of the Cloud Security Alliance in Singapore. A big advocate for diversity and inclusion, so thank you. We next have with us Geetha. Geetha, thank you for joining us. Geetha heads infrastructure projects and both the delivery and the transformation of that at Panasonic Asia Pacific, based in Singapore. Geetha, you work for Panasonic and lead the standardization of regional infrastructure and digital transformation initiatives, senior program manager, and has had 14 plus years of managing really complex infrastructure transformation across the world. Specializing in blank sheet assignments, very interesting. So you basically like to get into these thick of things, and cross-functional IT management initiatives. When I was speaking to Geetha, one of the things she told me is that the focus of hers has always been infrastructure, and the number of men to women there has a significant problem because you can barely see women in the actual infrastructure, right, areas. So thank you for being here. The only man on the panel, and when I was talking to him, Chua, I said to him, look, this is how we always feel as women when we go out. He's the 20%. Usually we are the 20%. So I'm glad he's feeling like we always feel, though I'm sure we are making him feel comfortable. Joey heads IT at OSM Maritime Ship Management. So shipping is a very male-dominated industry. He's been in his career, he started his career as a marine engineer at the Republic of Singapore Navy. Now the head of IT in OSM, responsible for overall ICT strategy, and works in tandem with the global team. Now you also mentioned to me that you experienced the change of management from male-based to a female boss. Yes. So I'd like to really hear your perspectives on how change in guard has probably influenced your views on diversity and inclusion, of which you're also an advocate. And then at the far corner, we have Joyce. Joyce is the first vice president of enterprise data and governance at UOB Bank, has 20 plus years of experience in information, data privacy, cybersec, IT, and data governance, and part of, and I had to Google this, ISACA, Certified Data Privacy Solutions Engineer Exam Solutions Reviewer Panel, which basically means you probably sit on the panel that devises questions for data security professionals, right? Joined UOB in 2021 in the data management office. And what is interesting about Joyce is the fact that she has always been in male-dominated industries, starting with defense, then banking, and now specifically in data and privacy. So thank you, Joyce, for being with us. Now, as I just shared at the beginning of the panel, in APAC, we are constantly seeing fewer girls compared to men come into the STEM education industry, and that funnel greatly narrows as they leave education, but even more so when they leave their careers. Annie, I wanted to start off with you. Could you share a story of when you completed your studies coming out of uni and started a career in IT? When we were talking backstage, you mentioned formal courses like computer science or engineering in the way they exist today did not perhaps exist at that time. So how did you start your career in IT? What influenced it? And I really think this could be an uplifting conversation, especially around how do we push our younger women to pursue careers, even though they may not have formalized technical education.
So I graduated from NUS in computer science and information systems, and then have a master's in management of technology. Honestly speaking, I stumbled into this discipline because my original goal was to go get into law, but my English didn't make the mark. So clueless where I could go, I went to my vice principal at that time, and I asked him, so now what? And he said, apply for comm science. And I really thinking about that. He didn't even think that I was a girl, and he just said, apply for comm science, and I did. And prior to going to university, can you believe I've never seen a computer in my whole life, and I don't even know how to switch on a computer. So I think needless to say, I struggle a lot. When we were given our first assignment, coding assignment, it was totally mind-boggling. Like, what was that about? And I failed all my subjects in year one, but through my zeal and resilience, I improved and graduated.
Thank God for that.
Thank God. So, but honestly speaking, along the journey, I met with people who have helped me a lot, from classmates to friends to colleagues, right? So I started my career as a programmer. Ta-da, I was a programmer. And today, I'm an IT leader in a male-dominated environment, surviving in a VUCA world. But my point here is that if I, Joyce, and Geetha can do it, any woman can do it, correct? Yes. So my advice to a new generation would be, don't think that a career in technology is about machines and computers. Honestly speaking, if you speak to my family, they will tell you, I'm the most un-IT person you have ever met. I don't even know how to switch on the TV. I'm sorry, really, I don't know how to switch on TV. So, and there's always a management path in IT, right? And there's always IT in IT, or for me, IT in pharmaceutical, right? And the other thing is that if you have that ambition, don't underestimate your ability. Learn from women who have done it before, and listen to your stories and validate your presumption. And think big, right? And last but not least is a career in technology is very rewarding. It's like you said, embedded in the fiber of humankind and society already. So in pharma, we use technology to save and enhance life. So I feel that going into a career in technology is very rewarding. And I also like to answer that question. Climbing up the ladder is not about your technical competency. There are a lot of other factors at play. Yeah, so that's my story.
Well, that's interesting, Annie. So it also goes to show that entry into technology can be at any entry point. You don't have to have a formalized education, which goes back to some of the work that we are doing with new-collar workers, where you don't have to have formal education in computer science or in certain set areas of technology, but you can enter through other areas, even polytechniques. And this is really the new-collar workforce, which will gain experience of skills on the job. So thank you for sharing that. Joyce, in the corner, I'm very curious. As we are losing women in STEM at the university level itself, what do we need to do to attract them back to STEM, specifically to technology?
Yeah, I'm actually very surprised that Annie is actually from computer science and information system as well. I was from there as well. So I was one of the survivors of the funnels. People actually leave the computer and also technology careers after they have started. In my class, it's like 50-50, but then subsequently only a few of us and ladies that actually joined the IT workforces and so on. So I was actually a hardcore programmer as well, a software engineer with the defense. So I would see that to attract the ladies is to actually understand what are the things that they are afraid of, like discriminations, gender discriminations, and the lack of representations in the industry. In the early days, there's very few women or female leaders. Subsequently, as you can see, as technology boom, as technology started, there are actually the female leaders coming out, and they can actually learn from them, like what Annie said. And in fact, in STEMs, in actually technology especially, there's two skills that are required. One is problem solving, one is creativity. So this is like, regardless whether you are female or male, you will always have it. And for female, we are like the creatures from the Venus, where the men are from Mars, I'm sorry. But then we are actually more or less can multitask. So that is our advantage. And we are able to actually collaborate and communicate. that's like the nature of a mother when they always want to actually teach the kids. They have to actually communicate, nag, and so on. So these communication skills come with us. So this is the things that we can actually leverage on to actually get into the STEMs or the technology industry.
I think probably addressing these with younger women through outreach programs will help them probably feel a little bit more secure about joining the industry.
And mentorship. So basically it's like one of my society, we have this She Lead Tech ambassador. I'm part of them. So we are actually trying to ensure that women are excited to join the tech. And then we share our success story, our lesson learned, and then perhaps maybe some of the personal experience with the mentorship as well.
Thank you, Joyce. I actually wanted to move a little bit now to actually entering the workforce. So what happens after you enter the workforce? So we know that women are slowly an ever-growing part of the tech industry. I mean, the number is inching forward, though it's inching forward very slowly. And this is despite gender gaps, gender discrimination, as you mentioned, pay gaps. There are valid pay gaps which have been studied and printed. What I really wanted to, and one of the things, surprising things we saw pre-COVID is that the representation of women in the tech industry was actually on the rise. And it was a very welcome change. Come COVID, in many countries, we've seen, as common wisdom suggests, women having to look at, care of families in addition to work. We've seen that number get upended a little bit. However, the recent research which has come around is actually showing that the reality is a little bit more nuanced. We are seeing more mid-level women feeling more comfortable during and emerging out of COVID because this work from home has given them a new lease of life. We see them feel comfortable about the ability to represent themselves on meetings, but from home. Not having to waste time and travel and look at their families' work, So there is a better, I'd say, balance than there was pre-COVID. So Geetha, as a tech professional, specifically in the infrastructure space, which is male-dominated, what changes are you seeing pre and post-COVID?
Infrastructure, to be specific, like you said, is very male-dominated. Over the last 14 years that I've been in the infrastructure side, in most of my meetings and in my discussions, I'm always the only woman. And in the last 14 years, I'm really looking and sourcing for women to join, championing infrastructure. But for some reason, women come and go out of infrastructure. You see the trend of women coming into infrastructure, staying there for 2 years, and the moment they get an opportunity to join a business IT or application development, they take that path out. And for me, that's very surprising because for me, the coolest things happen in infrastructure. We have the biggest IT investments in infrastructure, not in applications, right? Your biggest data centers are billion-dollar investments. And this, for me, also as a project management professional, there's so much of life in infrastructure which women fail to see. So I see this as a problem on women's side as well. Everything need not be sexy. Things can be, sometimes hardcore as well. And that's my thought on infrastructure and why I think there is more potential for women. We need more empathetical women. We need people to do more multitasking, which generally comes easier to women, and so on. That's one part of it. And how has it changed post-COVID? To be honest, I don't see any change on the infrastructure side, to be specific. But coming back to your point on how the work from home has empowered women, for us, like for me, for example, my life is going smooth. Tough projects I can handle. Difficult men I can handle. Go into a meeting where there are 50 people on a call, I can handle. But when my son falls sick, I have to pause everything else, right? And that's where the multiple roles that women play come into picture. But during COVID, I see myself more empowered because I'm able to juggle these things. I do not have to take leave to be able to manage my personal situation. I can take 2 hours off, take care of my son, and be on escalation calls and manage my go-lives, for example. So this is in one way that I personally feel that COVID has empowered women. And that's the third point that you mentioned is the promotions that come to women post-COVID. I personally feel it's because we feel more empowered, we have more time in our hands, we don't have to get ready and go to office, we don't have to apply leave when the kid is sick or the mother-in-law is sick. So we are able to juggle a lot of things. I think that is in one way in which COVID has empowered.
And you're seeing that happen?
Yes, that's what I've observed as well.
So given that perhaps most companies are evaluating a hybrid work situation, meaning we're not coming back to work 100% anytime in the near future, Does this mean that there will generally be, you can anticipate greater participation of women in tech?
Again, like in the previous session, right, we heard Hemanta say it's like always a balance. Effective organizations have a balance between offense and defense. I think we can take the same point here. It should need to be balanced. I'm not an advocate of full-time work from home, but what I'm saying is that that does empower, and organizations, if we want to promote diversity and if we want to sustain more women in the workforce, or equality for that matter, we need to empower this kind of hybrid approaches and not make it my policy is you have to come to office 3 days a week and 2 days you can work from home. That will not work. That is no longer empowering, right? So my point here is look at the need. And if you want to empower DEI, then you need to be flexible, not just by word, but by practice as well.
So flexibility and balance is what you're espousing. Okay, thank you, Geetha. Annie, I want to come back to you. You're obviously very experienced. You've been in the industry for a long time. How has the industry changed for women in the last 20 years or so?
So let me share my journey. As a perfectionist woman, I am like Geetha. I wanted to be the best mother in the world to my only child, who is 22 years old this year. I cannot see myself outsourcing that role to anyone. I wanted to be an engaged mother. So when she was a baby, you can imagine flexible working arrangement was totally not common in Singapore. But I took out that courage to raise it with our local HR, who didn't sit well with that. I offered myself as a guinea pig. I said, I want to try out this new operating model, and I was given a big pay cut as a sacrifice, but it's okay because at that time my priority was in my family. Fast forward today, I feel that flexible working arrangement, work-life integration, balance, hybrid working are all playing out in favor for women, just like what Geetha mentioned, yeah? We are able to balance our work and our life better because the topics are no longer taboos. And working in tech industry means that we need to work longer hours, especially my role, I need to support 3 regions. And we need to keep on upskilling ourselves. And we seem to be working round the clock, correct? Because the technology is in our hand. So I think you know what I mean. But from my perspective and lens, women nowadays are more courage. And they know what they want and what are their priorities. And they know how to exert their worth and their rights and their values. And they are not afraid to voice it out. But one more thing is very important, is I see that we are more confident because of the support we are getting from our ecosystem, from our family to company to colleagues. It's just not ourselves. And the whole ecosystem have to move and support us. Yeah.
And you're saying you've seen those changes
happen? I've seen it myself, yeah, and I've seen it around us as well, yeah.
You think if you speak to women in your company, or if you speak to, say, for example, your friends, they would notice the same changes?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do want to bring in Joey. Joey, you've been sitting quite quietly, so I do want to bring in your opinion on this. So we do understand that there are systemic problems that hold women back in tech. We've talked a little bit about that. STEM studies imbalance, inequality in pay. There is a great degree of isolation, and that isolation has been spoken of quite a bit recently, especially post-COVID. Lack of mentors and sponsorship. There is also deep-rooted biases, right? Now, we also know that the tech industry is still male-dominated, if this is any indication of how the industry looks like, right? Before I ask Joyce, and I want to ask Joyce her opinion as to what challenge she's faced, but I wanted to first come to you and ask, as a man in the industry, when you're surrounded by more men that look like you, feel like you, what do you think are challenges that women feel or face at the workspace? And what is it that men do, A, to overcome those challenges, or to exacerbate those challenges?
I thought I wouldn't have a chance to speak, actually, after so long. Before I start with your question, every time I'm in a panelist, I like to introduce myself as having a lovely marriage, and have 3 beautiful kids. And that's actually me. And I feel that whatever professional burdens that we have, or achievement that we had, the most important is always the family. Yeah, and I actually congratulate all my panelists, fellow panelists, for being the greatest mother, to the only child, now even 22, right? Yes, still the greatest mother. So I think that's something that I always love to advocate. And that's why I also look at the DEI. To be honest, in the past, I was always blind to it, right? Not because that I felt that, women is, we don't need them in the workplace, they just stay at home. That's not what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is that, I see fairness, I see fairness in everywhere I go to, I see my sisters being competent, I see my mentor who is here today being really competent, telling me a lot of stuff, and I see that, these people are achieving a lot of things. So what are we talking about, diversity, and why are we being so explicit in trying to make it happen? And it's only after I was educated by this thing called unconscious bias, right? Where we actually, deep in our minds, in our hearts, the way we speak, if you talk to a lady, hey, come, let's have a drink before you head home, she won't be free, she need to go back and take care of the family, and so on and so forth. So these kind of things is small talk. It's small talk, right? But then it's actually unconscious bias, right? It can be age and it can be height, beauty and so on and so forth. But gender plays a huge part as well. When I look at it, right, the challenge that women face is a lot of this unconscious bias by men, by myself in the past. I'm sure I did that as well. I'll be very honest. But I think to overcome this, or to think about how to overcome this, is even more important. So in my mind is that it's a mindset thing, right? It's both the employer and also the employee. The employer needs to make it very explicit. Can you imagine a lot of people actually ask me, why am I here today? They saw, hey, Joey, you saw it in LinkedIn, and said, hey, Joey, how come you're in this panelist? They got nothing to do with you. Did they got the name wrong? It's a unisex name, right? Is it? No. They invited me. They explicitly make sure there was a male voice in the panel. And that's something that we have to bring back to our workplace, to make sure that there is a female voice in the leadership team, or female voices in the leadership team to make it happen. Actually, by research, if you look at companies, similar firms that has women 30% and above, and compared to firms that has less than that, or there's no representative, the net profit is actually higher with ladies in the leadership roles. So it's not that we want to explicitly say that this is the right thing to do, to have female voices in the leadership team because I want to show that I'm doing DEI. But it's actually a great business choice, if not the best.
That's really good to know. But before I pass it on to Joyce, I wanted to ask you, how do you check yourself for unconscious biases? Because there are unconscious biases. So as a man at A shipping, B technology, both male dominated, how do you leave your unconscious biases at the door?
I think it's a conscious effort, to be honest, right? Everything you say, everything you see, everything you think needs to be very consciously thought about, right? Like I said, small talk sometimes like this, even though, I have very close colleagues, ladies colleagues, there might be small talks, right? A lot of small talks. But the thing is that what you explicitly mention, especially in public, right, can really go a long way in creating such a bias, right? And everybody feels that oh, this leader said this, this must be true then. This male leader said this about this female. Then
so you have to model the right behaviors.
So you need to monitor, especially for I guess in this context, right? Male colleagues, right? Male colleagues, we're supposed to be allies to them, right? We need to be consciously knowing what we are talking about. Jokes are nice, you know, but you also need to consider and be empathetic to what the ladies is thinking about.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that experience. Joyce, what has been your greatest challenge that you've overcome successfully?
I think one of the greatest challenges is also related to what Joey has said about unconscious bias. When I started my career and I started to become the project lead, there was really this male engineer in my team that has a bias against the women. So basically, he was not listening to my discussion, the tasks that I assigned, and so on. So I have a hard time to actually communicate to him. And I also have unconscious bias. I was biased against his age as well, because he's very mature, a senior one. So I was thinking that he's like my father. Now I'm telling my father what to do. So what should I say, and so on. So I learned that I have to be humble and really have to actually talk and listen to him and understand where he's coming from and where his point coming from. Because he did it once, he did it twice, he has experience. So he knows that, okay, this approach may not be correct. So he is being very stern, but then it's like you have to communicate. And that was one of the achievements when I left the company, the defense company, is like I become friends with this person. It's like we break our unconscious bias, and it's like he thanked me for actually being the project lead for his team, and I thank him for teaching me how to actually understand the blind spots that I have and from other people's perspective. I think collaboration is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Just a little anecdote related to what you said. So we have a colleague at work, and one of our other colleagues who she works closely with is called Anthony. Now, her father's name is also Anthony. So every time she calls him Anthony, she feels as though she's calling her father by name. So she doesn't call him Anthony anymore. She calls him something else. So I thought that was quite interesting. But I actually wanted to share with all of you something that was just recently published by the Kellogg School of Management. And they said, and they predicted, that half the women who earn an MBA will leave the workforce within a decade of graduation. This is a really worrying statistic. It's a global statistic. So half the women who earn an MBA will leave the workforce within 10 years of graduation. And contrary to popular opinion, it's not because they're getting married. It's not because they're going to have kids. It's not because they have to go and tend for their families. The word which has been used by women repeatedly is frustration. They're leaving out of frustration. An article in New York Times, which then corroborated this, said women cited 3 reasons to underpin this frustration. The first was extreme isolation, not feeling belonging at the workspace, feeling as though they're alone. The second reason was competition and competing with people in the wrong category. So it's across the lanes and it's not fair competition. And being disadvantaged from the start because your earning has been low from the start. So as you go up, you're going to be paid lower. So what's the point? And then deeply rooted barriers, what you both talked about, unconscious bias. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that. How many women here, and I know there are not too many, but how many women who out of ambition and who out of wanting to do more have been labeled aggressive at workspace? I have. Right? Yeah. But the man who's doing the same job has been said to be a go-getter or just doing his job. Leadership qualities like ambition are very misunderstood. Leadership qualities like wanting to grow in your career are understood to be overreaching. So there is a double speak or double standards here, right? Geetha, I wanted to ask you, based on your experience, right, would you say these double standards exist? And then what can be done about them? Because if these double standards are not catered for, how are we going to make sure that women actually grow at the workplace? And is there a role for allies and mentors here?
Absolutely. I have a very loud voice, so naturally I'm always sidelined as bossy, right? And then I have very strong opinions as well, and that also makes me bossy. And earlier in my career, I was always asked to tone down, to apologize to customers for no mistake of mine. And those things were my personal, fuel to the fire. And how did I change that? How did I come up against all of this? Like I said earlier, I was always the only woman in the room because I'm in infrastructure. There, we had a 150-member team. I was the only woman in the room, in that department, 150-member infrastructure department. So I've seen all of that, right? And starting, my pay was 50% lower than a male colleague, because that's how it is supposed to be. And that's where I started. And today I head infrastructure projects, delivery, and digital transformation for the whole region of Asia Pacific in a big company like Panasonic. And how did this change happen? Because every time I was sidelined, every time I was told bossy, I had to take that as my fuel to the fire. But like you also mentioned a point of allies, right? Like I said, there are 149 men in my department, but there were mentors for me among those men, who saw my potential, who saw how consistent I was in my deliveries, who saw when I was not wrong and when I was made to apologize. And they were my allies. And over a period of time, right, they've handheld me, given me the biggest projects. Now, the biggest data center migrations in Singapore, I've handled them. And how many women get that opportunity? Men give that opportunity, right? It's how consistent you are, how you take these feedback seriously, and how you continue to prove. This is one way in which you can continue to break those barriers. For me, that is my personal story. And men have always been my mentors.
Well, more power to you. I really hope as you grow in your career further, you're able to correct salaries of women who are coming after you. You're able to call out disadvantages if they're being meted out to other women, right? I really hope you can be that stone that other women can stand on as well.
Trying my best.
Thank you.
And I think DEI policies help towards that. So now that DEI is a thing, right? Now we have more empowerment from our HR and so on, who are able to help us to correct these gaps, which was not possible 5 years ago without policies.
Thank you. In fact, IBM's ex-CEO Lou Gerstner once said that people don't do what they're expected to do. People do what they're inspected to do. So those policies and those metrics and those numbers that sometimes we make our leaders and ourselves accountable for drive change. It's not about measuring for this, something for the measuring, the measurement of it, but for the fact that if you don't display and make people accountable, that behavior doesn't permeate down. Joey, I want to twist this question back to you. You see a woman trying to be, well, you see a woman who's really wanting to make a difference. I hope you're not calling her out as ambitious, as being aggressive. And if you do see people doing that, how are you making sure that the double standards don't permeate?
First, I like to address the part on the double standard first, right? A lot of people don't see it happening because you don't see it from the female point of view on how we look at it. When somebody says that, you know, oh, this guy is being confident, speaking on stage, you know, aggressive, passionate, he's a nice guy. You know, he has the ambition. I think he got room to grow. And then if you see a lady saying that, then you say, oh, this lady is not very ladylike, you know, she's loud. She's ambitious, you know, but she's really good. You know, but these are the things that where the recipient, right, needs to really look at it, right, to understand that there is double standard, right? So when you look at someone in the eye, you need to make sure that it doesn't matter if this guy is your friend, is your brother, at work, right? And if you're going to treat him like how you will treat the lady beside him, then that's how you should be doing. But a lot of people are not actually doing that, right? Because this is one of my boys, right? And then we had a lot of beers together. And we can talk really nice, open to each other. And then after that, we talk about this other, you know, woman. So we need to be really transparent about it, you know, to understand that we are wrong, right? We are wrong in certain ways when we make certain remarks and so on and so forth. So that is the effect of having that double standard. Maybe a lot of people might disagree with me saying that, no, we treat everybody nicely, but that's not the truth, just to be honest, right? From my end, like I said, in the past, I always see that, you know, things are really not like this. I was blind to it because when I look at my, like you mentioned earlier, my MD now is a female, my head of finance, a female, my CSO is a female, my service desk manager is a female, and they are probably the best people in the organization, right? Because when I look at them, they are really caring, they mentor people much better than a lot of guys. You know, I was just sharing a joke earlier with one of my friends that sometimes, you know, you join a new organization, you know, they just basically throw you in the pool and you try to swim, right? If not, then you die there. But with female mentors, I think it's a little bit different. They guide you. They make it a comfortable place for you to grow. I think that's important. And, you know, relating to this again, right? If you don't have this kind of pool of people in the first place, right, how are you going to start up this thing, right? So you will never grow that kind of pool of talents in the female industry if we stop all these biasness, double standards, getting them in, feeling comfortable to work with us together.
That's very interesting, and I hope that message goes out to the men in the audience as well, right? Because if your women allies have made it easy for you to grow, how do we reciprocate that back for our women to grow? We are reaching the top of the hour. We did start late, so we may take a little bit more time to do this. I do have one last set of questions for the panelists, and then we'll open it up to the audience. There is also cause for optimism. You know, a recent study said that we will exit 2022. We are almost exiting 2022 with 1 in 4 leadership positions filled by women. And this is a Singapore statement in STEM, which is pretty good because our starting point anyway was 22%. If we can move that to 25, 26, 30%, we would have made a pretty big impact. Geetha, what would be needed to make this happen?
Like I briefly touched upon, I think policies are a good place to start. And that, like you said, makes it measurable and makes it actionable and makes it legitimate, basically. And I think organizations should not just preach about DEI and making it a more equal place, but ensure that there are policies in place which are measurable and tangible that empowers people on the working line to ensure that goes down to all the way to the bottom and gets implemented.
Thank you. Joyce, quickly, what are progressive technology companies, including your bank, doing to make this possible?
I think I want to say our bank is like one of the 3 local banks that have the CTO or the CIO as a female. So basically we are more than the 20-something%. So basically I think it's like what we can do is to ensure there's equality and inclusiveness and the culture. Other than the policy is the tone from the top and the culture of embracing anyone in terms of like whether you are female or male. So long you do the job, you get your KPIs, you get your promotions and so on. Yeah.
So you're doing that.
Yes.
And what about constitution of DE&I bodies in the organization, changing of metrics, making sure that job slates include women on that? You don't only hire men.
For that, I don't think we put it explicitly because DEI is like not really like say it's so explicit in our bank, but the thing is that it's based on the culture, on the what are the things that we do in terms of our values, honorable, enterprising, and so on. So that it's like it's inclusive of all. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Annie, what role can team members, and especially if you talk from your experience in the MSD organization, play to support their female peers? And Joy touched upon that earlier.
Definitely, right? And there are tons of statistics to show how company will benefit from it. So in short, be an ally. And when I say be an ally, what does it mean? I think Joey touched a lot of it, is call out inequality. If you see it, stand up for us, right? Pull us into conversation, allow us to speak. And the other thing is that the best cross-gender ally relationship is one which is reciprocal and mutually growth enhancing. So Joey mentioned that guys have their strength, female have their strength. So why don't we partner together, you know, to realize those goals? And one last thing which I feel very important is please don't sit on the fence. You either support or don't support. Don't tell me you sit on the fence, right? So, and be visible and be visible in your actions. Don't just say, yeah, I agree with you. You just like recycling, we all agree in recycle, but when we go to NTUC, we'll grab the first plastic bag. So don't be like that. So yeah.
Thanks. We should so basically take your own cloth bags with you. Yes. That's your, okay. Joey, anything to add?
Actually, I think there's so much to say. But I think really is to really sit back and speak out. be it on pay, be it on people's action, and don't just talk about it, right? Because I can talk really, really well, but you need to do something.
Execute.
You need to empower people to do so as well, right? Make it a comfortable place for people to do so, and not be worried that there might be something coming back to them, affecting their promotion and so on and so forth. So this is where Joyce also mentioned top leadership culture needs to be there to ensure that it is in place.
Got it. Thank you. In IBM, we have this saying: "Don't be a bystander, be an upstander." Because if you're not an upstander, then you're sitting on the fence, as you said. Before we wrap up, any questions from the audience? This is an interesting topic and impacts us all. Here, we can see them on the Slido. I'm going to start with the ones which have got popularly voted. Diversity in the industry tends to be more talk than action, just what you both said. How can leadership teams express and ensure that these commitments are executed against? So, Joey, you were just talking about it.
Yeah, I was just talking about it, like to echo what Geetha mentioned, right? You need to state out in a policy, and then obviously you need to set up teams to do so, right? To enforce it, to be in place, so that it's not just talk about action, and it's more about action. Same thing, leadership teams need to explicitly express this in a lot of things, like for example, their hiring process, make it gender balanced, right? Meaning that. Like for example, in my industry, is very heavily inclined to male dominant. But then, if the leadership team is able to ensure that our hiring process is gender balanced, like I said, it's a good business sense, then things will actually be better that way.
Yeah, thank you. I may not have time to take all questions. I do want to take the last one. Men have a boys' club. The old boys' clubs always existed for support and networking. How can women do that? Where's our girls' club?
Actually, in our company, we have a lot of clubs, right? Clubs. We have women in IT, women in network. So I'm saying that these clubs are very important. These communities are very important. It provides that infrastructure and ecosystem, right, to nurture that right behavior. And I also like to add that the right behavior has to be recognized and rewarded. All right. If not, we try to do. Joey can do all his best, but nobody is acknowledging what he's doing. So we need to call out the right behavior so as to inspire other people.
So in Singapore itself, there is a great momentum going around, and I've seen this in other countries as well, about how women tend to grow when they find their circles of safety. So there are a lot of clubs and institutions that have started to network with each other to create these extended circles of safety. And in that safe space, you can grow, you can learn, and in essence, each of the women in that club is helping another grow. So as you climb, you push the other to grow with you, right?
Some of them you can watch on LinkedIn. It's like Lean In, I Am Remarkable. These are all communities for women, exactly what you said.
Yeah. So I think that's basically the end. Before we get off the stage, from Joyce onwards, one professional advice, something that amazing happened to you that you want to leave the audience with.
I think you just not to be afraid to try new things and keep learning and do what you are possible, and subsequently you will do something impossible.
Thank you. Take risks. Yeah, Geetha?
For me, I was always the last in the room, never given an opportunity to speak. But I grabbed every opportunity I got, and I did better than the rest of the people. And at one point, where is Geetha? For any big projects, where is Geetha? This is a question people ask. So that is something that I have built from scratch, and that's what I want to leave you guys with.
That's a really important point. A lot of times women hesitate to say yes, but saying yes comes sometimes with its own, you take risk and you take reward. So you learn to say yes till you say no. Thank you. Joey?
What I'm saying is more general. It can apply to man or woman. If someone gives you a rope to hang yourself, use it to hoist yourself to the top.
Wow. Oh, that's deep. And Annie?
So for me, would be, this came from my personal coach, will be focus on being, not doing. Don't focus on the goal or what you want to achieve, but how you show up every day for people in the true authenticity, bringing your true life to work, right? Like a father, like a mother to work. That's spreading the positive energy.
Well, thank you very much, Joyce, Geetha, Joey, and Annie, for sharing your candid insights. I think this is a challenging space to be, and I think it'll require a lot of work both at a policy level, at an industry level, but also at a grassroots and education level for us to solve this gender imbalance in IT and technology, right? But I think with role models like you and what you're doing in your organizations, I genuinely feel that there is optimism. And I hope the audience today can walk away with a little bit of optimism, but also walk away with ideas and strategies that some of them are executing at their workplace. So be upstanders in your own organization. Please join me in congratulating this amazing panel, and let's get together soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charu and panelists. And Joey, you've definitely earned your place, among these female gurus. Thank you for being an advocate for women.